Let's dive into some more advanced techniques. You'll see here that I have a simple sermon presentation with some scripture passages and some full screen text attached. We haven't applied any formatting because that's the last step that we want to do before publishing our document. What I'm going to do, because I have these nice handy templates, is I'm going to select all of the short scripture passages that I know will fit in 3 lines or less. And I do this just by holding down the Control key and clicking each of the slides in turn. Once I've had those selected, I can right-click and choose the template that is appropriate. If you do not have these templates installed in your system, please let us know and we will get them to you. Under our sermon templates, we have a lower third that is yellow. We typically use yellow for scripture. So I choose that and it automatically resizes and reformats the text appropriately. Very simple. I have some full screen text that I know is going to fill up the whole screen because it will not fit in a small lower third format. Again, I select each of them holding the Control key. I right-click and I choose the appropriate template. In this case, a full size with yellow text. You'll notice that with these templates, there is nothing in the margins of each slide. There's this blank spot, and that is simply because when we project here at Bethel, our projectors will cut off the edges of these slides in order to fit them onto our screens, which are a 4:3 aspect ratio. Because we record in a widescreen ratio, we actually want to have content around the edges so that the recording doesn't look like it has a square with black bars around the edges. Now you'll notice here that my first slide is not scripture, so we don't want to use yellow text, but we will right-click it and we'll choose our template, which is a lower third with just white text. Now if I want to be a little bit artistic, notice that this text, the top stuff, is a little bit more important than the bottom. And so I'm going to resize now this text to add a little contrast. The bottom text I will remove the bolding, and the top text I'm just going to choose heavy here, because it looks a little bit nicer than the bold. Now that I've done that, you'll see that it looks just a little bit nicer. Now we have to do this last, because if I come in here and apply the template again, it's going to undo all of my text changes. So typically what we want to do is get our text in first, then do our mass crude adjustments to create the templates, and then if there are any minor tweaks that need to be made, such as resizing or the like, then I will come in and do those last. Now imagine with me that you want to create a slide with an image in it. Again, the way our system is set up is that anything that is blank, anything that does not have a background, will show live video through the slide. And so if we're going to create an image, we're going to want to cover up the background so that we don't have half of the screen covered with an image and half with a live preacher. The quickest and simplest way it would seem to put an image onto your slide would be simply to drag an image up into your slide. However, this creates problems because when you drag an image onto a slide, it attaches it as a background image. And the thing about background images is that they are persistent. So if I come to a slide that has an image embedded as part of the slide, and I move to the next slide, that image will disappear. However, if we attach it as a background, then moving to the next slide will not actually remove that slide. You'll see here in our preview window that our background image is still present. So how do we get around this issue? Well, let's go back to our editor. We're going to remove that cue to add the media as a background, which is right here. And instead of dragging an image up here, I'm going to use this button up here that says Add Image to Slide. When I do that, I'm going to locate the picture that I want to insert. Let's say we're going to put a picture of a desert in here. And it's going to insert it there for me. I can now move it around, resize it as I need to, and it gives me a little bit more control over what we're doing. Now, as I mentioned before, our projectors on our screens will cut off the edges of our image. It just so happens that, mathematically speaking, if you go into your object properties, that means that our x dimension is 240. The x dimension measures the distance in pixels between the left edge of our slide and the left edge of our object. Since we use the whole screen from top to bottom on our projection, our y dimension, which is top to top, is 0. If you do the math, 240 pixels to the left and also 240 pixels off from the right, it leaves you with a maximum width of 1440. Our height, again, should match our slide, which is 1080 pixels. And so now what you're seeing here, when projected, will look like this picture is filling the whole screen. But when it is recorded, there will be these sidebars that do not have any content on them. We'll notice here, because we've embedded our image this way, that once we select this slide and we move on to the next slide, our picture will indeed disappear. But let's look at those sidebars. If we leave it like this, because there's nothing in the background there, then on our recording, whoever is viewing that recording will see this image, and they will also see live video peeking through the sides of this image. That isn't very desirable. The quickest and the easiest way to change that is to use a template that we have provided that is full with a black background. That is going to insert a flat black shape behind your image so that video does not peek through. But practically, what if that doesn't work for you? If you need to do this yourself, click this button up here where it says Add Rectangle to Slide. It will create a square block of color. Now, if we're thinking properly, we can move this image down behind the picture on our slide so that it will layer itself underneath that picture. Right now we're in the Slide Properties tab. I'm going to bring that to front for a minute while we work with it. Under our Object Properties, we can change the fill of that to black. We could actually change it to any other color if we wanted, and we're going to do blue just so that you can see what's going on here. You do not need a line color to surround it, and so we're going to uncheck that box. Now I happen to know that my slide is, starting at the upper left-hand corner, is 0 and 0, with a width of 1920 pixels and a height of 1080 pixels. That creates a flat, again, image on our slide. Now I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to push this down arrow button to layer it behind the image on our slide. As you can see now, what we're displaying is not a blank background, but we're showing the image and we have a flat black background. Actually, it's a blue background, and we're going to change that. So I'm going to select my shape and I'm going to change that fill color to black. Voila. There it is. Now when I show this video, we will have a black background as opposed to live video peeking through the sides. So anytime we use a picture that is smaller than the slide itself, we're going to want to layer in a flat background just to make sure that we don't have any ugly video showing through the background. Of course, it's possible that while the preacher is preaching, you want them to show an image on the lower part of their screen that is not too big, just as an illustration. And if it's small enough, you could indeed leave the live background there and just layer the video over top of it. That would create kind of a neat effect if you use a little bit of a shadow here. Now we can show, if I can find an option here. Once we've set that background in place, we could show an image over the top of it. It'd be kind of a cool effect if that's what you're going for. However, again, in order to avoid that live video from showing through in the background, all we're going to do is we're going to layer in here a rectangle of the proper dimensions, starting at 0, 0, which is the top left corner, width of 1920, height of 1080. We're going to move it down to the background, and we're going to set its color to black.